Hello and welcome to Fortune Treks. Hola! Look at the map of South America and one question stands out. Why does everyone speak Spanish but Brazil speaks Portuguese? The reason of course is that Brazil was a Portuguese colony. But what if I told you that Brazil was technically ruled by the King of Spain? Today, we are solving the historical mystery of how the Spanish crown gained control of Brazil and how that control was swiftly and quietly ousted not by a war on Brazilian soil, but by a single democratic coup thousands of miles away in Portugal. Part 1. How Spain inherited Brazil. The Spanish monarchy didn't conquer Brazil. They inherited it. This happened during a bizarre dynastic event known as the Iberian Union, which lasted from 1580 to 1640. The succession crisis. In 1578, the young Portuguese king Sebastian died without an heir during a crusade in Morocco. 2 years later, his great-uncle, Cardinal Henry, also died, ending Portugal's long-ruling House of Aviz. This allowed Philip II of Spain, who was the son of a Portuguese princess, to claim the vacant Portuguese throne. He successfully invaded and was recognized as the new king of Portugal. The personal union. This was a personal union, meaning the king of Spain was also the king of Portugal. The two empires were technically separate kingdoms and administrations, but they shared the same monarch. Crucially, the entire Portuguese Empire, including the vast colony of Brazil, now fell under the domain of the Spanish Habsburg monarchy. Ironically, this period under Spanish rule proved vital for the modern shape of Brazil. With the Treaty of Tordesillas border temporarily irrelevant, Portuguese colonies known as Bandeirantes pushed deep into the interior, laying the foundations for Brazil's massive modern territorial expansion far into the lands nominally reserved for Spain. Part 2. The Restoration and the Ouster. After 60 years, Portuguese subjects both in Lisbon and Brazil grew increasingly unhappy. They felt the Spanish kings prioritized their own colonies and neglected the defense of Portugal's global empire. The Dutch problem. Spain was at war with the rising power of the Dutch Republic. Since Portugal was now under the Spanish crown, the Dutch began attacking and capturing Portuguese colonies across the globe, including key sugar-producing regions in northeast Brazil, Recife and Olinda. This was the final straw. The end of Spanish rule was determined in Lisbon, Portugal, not in Salvador, Brazil. On December 1st, 1640, a group of Portuguese nobles staged a carefully planned coup, storming the royal palace and deposing the Spanish regent. This act began the Portuguese Restoration War. The Brazilian response. Upon hearing the news, the Portuguese colonists and officials in Brazil immediately declared their loyalty to the new Portuguese king, John IV of House of Braganza. There was no large-scale military conflict required to expel the Spanish, because the entire colonial administration was Portuguese to begin with. The moment the head of the empire changed in Lisbon, the Spanish presence in Brazil was simply dissolved. Brazil seamlessly and peacefully reverted to being a Portuguese colony. Part 3. The true fight against the Dutch. This leads to the great historical irony. The major military conflict fought on Brazilian soil during this era was not against the Spanish, but against the Dutch. After regaining their independence, the Portuguese crown and the colonists in Brazil had to dedicate years of bloody warfare to fully expel the Dutch invaders who had occupied the vital northeast. This conflict, known as the Pernambucan Insurrection, 1645 to 1654, was led by a united front of Portuguese, African Brazilian, and the indigenous forces. It was this collective defense of the territory, fighting for the Portuguese crown against a common European enemy, that ultimately secured Brazil's borders and cemented its loyalty to Portugal. So, the Spanish were ousted from Brazil by a single successful political stroke in Portugal in 1640. They lost the crown and with it, they lost Brazil. The Portuguese then secured their colony through a fierce military campaign against the Dutch. It is a complex historical moment that ensured the Portuguese language and not Spanish would dominate the vast South American nation we know today. So what surprised you most about this slice of history? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow for more deep dives into global history. Ciao!